Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the modern market. I don't know what happened there. Something happened. Someone said a message. A lot of people were reacting. I want to hear what happened in just a second, but we are back. This is our daily show from Monday to Friday, back in our usual time slot at 7 a.m. Eastern Time, 12 p.m. BST. Thank God daylight savings has worked itself out. The audio has now worked itself out. We are back. The bull, maybe not the bull market, but the market is back as well. I'm your host, Bcheck. I'm joined by my legendary co-host, Legendary. Legendary, do you know what just happened there? Or does someone need to inform me?
I'm clueless. When you're playing the music the way you're streaming it through the road, I can't hear it. So I'm just sitting here 5 minutes in silence until you start speaking. So I have absolutely no clue what happened and why everyone was laughing. But I see Jack with your hand up. So please explain what was going on. What did we miss?
Yeah, just pure silence
silence.
with B-Check typing away. So there was definitely like a hot mic ability, so we could hear that you were clearly like getting things set up. Just no music at all until like the final 30 seconds.
Yeah,
Good times.
I think that's good because now everyone has the same experience that I have leading up to the show. 5 minutes in silence, meditating, getting ready for the bull market, getting ready for the modern market. I think that's good. We could keep it like that.
Yeah, I know Funky does his guided meditations after. Maybe that's what the first 5 minutes can turn into. Funky, what do you think? Every now and again, we just guided meditation for the first 5.
That'd be amazing. And I'm just glad Jack said something because I didn't know. I was like, does B-Check know that it's just typing right now? So I'm glad Jack said something. But it was actually funny. It was cute.
Guys, the reality is, if you're ever this is just like the NFT market syndrome thing all the time. Like, you assume that the founders or the hosts know what's going on, and the answer is no. No one ever knows what's going on. Like, I had the phone plugged into my charger instead of the device, which has happened before, actually. So no, I didn't know what was going on. You are wrong to assume that we do know what's going on.
And in solidarity with my co-host, I'm perfectly clueless as well. That makes a perfect duo.
Great start to the show, Legendary. How are you doing otherwise, aside from this little debacle? How are you doing on this Monday?
Unfortunately, I couldn't hear the typing. But also, you have a very aggressive way to type.
Yes, I know that.
And I remember that from our calls. So I was definitely more zen to not hear the typing and just to have pure silence. Other than that, my weekend was great. Took the weekend off. Didn't do a lot in Web3. I think the only thing that I did was trying Skyborn as a game. I mean, there's just a couple of quests to be done. No real gameplay yet. But that was the only Web3 thing that I did. Other than that, spent time with my family, took 2 days off, and felt very good to do that.
Interesting. Taking time off. I feel like this time, I mean, I agree. I feel like there's 2 types of taking time off at the moment. There's taking time off of Twitter, which is like one type of taking time off, which is maybe the more reasonable thing to do at the moment, because it's like, to keep tweeting all the time as well is quite tiring. But then there's a separate taking time off where it's like, are you actually completely taking time off? Like, or are you doing some admin? Are you doing some trading? Are you, I don't know, doing some research in some other ways? That's the aspect of stuff where even if I'm not tweeting on the weekends now, which I try not to be honest, I'm pretty busy doing stuff, because I feel like it's the time to lock in. What do you think about that?
Fair enough. For me, it was the other way around. I didn't do, as you call it, stuff, but I was way more active this weekend, posting on X, going back to old levels. And also, I told you last week that I'm kind of done with being diplomatic all of the time, announcing the legendary 2.0, and just being a bit more unfiltered, because it got to a point where I often just refused to speak my mind and just trying to not offend anyone and being very diplomatic with everything, because it was aware that I'm getting more and more reach. But it got to a frustrating point, and I was like, nah, I need to change that. So quite happy that I did.
Yeah, it's an interesting balance or line that we need to walk. I just think my ultimate view on this is that I didn't leave my corporate role where it's even more intensified. That feeling of not being able to say, I mean, it's not like you particularly want to say crazy stuff, right? That's really not the point. The point is not that you have some outrageous views that you're
Are you
desperate.
sure?
Well, in my case, maybe, but the average person, no. But, you know, in the corporate environment, you feel far more constrained to follow the line or whatever that may be. And I definitely didn't leave that to do that to myself in some respect. So I think it's important to just to say what you got to say. And yet we did see an example of, you know, in the extreme version of that in the last over the weekend where someone lost their job over some things that they said over, you know, for a long time ago. So maybe just keep that in mind, Legendary, as you go into Legendary 2.0.
Legendary 2.0 doesn't have any attention to post racist shit on the timeline, so nothing to worry about.
That is good to know. Good to know. Legendary 2.0 will be uncensored and yet conscientious, perhaps.
I like that. Shall we get started?
Let's do it. Let's do it. Before we get into today's headlines and price action, please do help us out by clicking that comment button in the right-hand corner where you can retweet the spaces so we can get as many people in here with us as possible. And as always, if you want to follow along, the first slide of the snapshot is pinned up top. It has the details I'm about to share. So please do like it if you find that it brings you some value today. So let's get into it, starting with the price action. We have Bitcoin at 35.1K. We have ETH at 1.88K. Solana at 40.3, down a couple of percent, 8 but 1.45. NFT volume still above $10 million in total at 10.9, Blur at 8.1, OpenSea at 2.2. Getting into the headlines, we have Yuga and Magic Eden planning a new ETH marketplace to enforce royalties. The royalty question is back. We're going to discuss it in a moment. Number 2, The Simpsons include NFTs in an episode where Bart is tokenized. And as a consequence, no sooner than a few moments after, Springfield Punks minted as a free mint, and they went up to a 0.45 ETH floor. I wonder if anyone got involved in that. I want to talk about both the Simpsons element and the free mint. And then finally, as a headline today, OpenSea Marketplace lays off 50% of its workforce. I want to talk about that, see where OpenSea is going, try to consider whether they might consider a token anytime soon. Floor prices and top sales. Number 1, CryptoPunks at 47 ETH, Bored Apes at 27.8, Mutants at 5.3, DGods at 3.2, Captains at 4.1, down 15%. Very volatile at the moment. Our captains, Azuki 5.1, Penguins at 4.8, Moobirds at 1.9, and Nouns at 24 ETH. A couple of top sales. We have a CryptoPunk knitted cap selling for 60 ETH. That's $113,000. And you have Memeland MVP selling for 46 ETH, which is $87,000. Legendary. That is the price action. Those are the headlines. Any numbers which you are enjoying there?
Definitely the overall NFT volume was a bit skeptical. We obviously did see the pump above 10 mil, but I wasn't sure if, it will sustain it for more than a couple of days. But it seems that the interest in NFTs has gone up significantly. And it also seems that the volume didn't crash again, but managed to stay above the 10 million mark. And, in the lowest lows, like 1 month ago, we were talking about 2 and 3 million on OpenSea and Blur each. So it's a nice increase from there.
Yeah, I agree. Like the chart, I shared the kind of the daily volume chart from the last couple of weeks, maybe in my first tweet this morning. And it's just kind of nicely trending upwards. I think yesterday was slightly lower than maybe the days before, but in general, it's certainly going up. So that was nice to see. And just a final point, which we've spoken about a number of times on the show, or I've kind of emphasized, is that we're definitely going to see a thread from someone at some point in time saying how much money they've made in the NFT market, whilst everyone else is not paying attention to the NFT market, because there's enough volatility in certain collections here to have fun. There's enough volatility. Like captains in the last, okay, and I know that there was this meme event, there's a token generation event, and therefore there was more volatility. But even aside from that, like penguins are at 4.8, they've been up at 5.2, right? And moonbirds were at 1.3, they're at 2. So there's enough volatility in the market for people to really, I mean, Mockaverse has gone from 0.6 to 1.5, I think at the top, maybe down at 1.35. Captains went down to 3.5, up to 4.9 again, and now back at 4. There's like volatility in this market for people to take a side of the trade and make money on it.
And not only volatility, but also, I think you shared that post. Was it by Spencer Capital? The play that you could have done on captains with Flooring Labs, if you moved them to the safe box that you had before the airdrop, essentially a free 2 ETH per captain that you could make on that. So not only can you profit from the volatility, but there's also a lot of opportunities if you play around and understand and spend time with new protocols and diving deeper into how they work.
Absolutely. There's various interesting opportunities to try to take advantage of at the moment. Just want to go around, maybe ask anyone else if anyone else is seeing any other opportunities, any other thoughts on the numbers. Jack, we missed you last week as you were at Breakpoint. First, quick question, how was it? And then 2, what kind of things are you seeing in the market at the moment as a large NFT holder?
Yeah, I think Breakpoint was awesome. Thanks for asking. It was great. I have come back with either the vid or a really bad man flu-esque cold. So that'll be interesting to get over the next couple of days. In terms of market, I think definitely seeing some interest in those like smaller collections. I've really got no time for new projects, which is such a polarizing take. Like most people feel like, and quite rightly, if I was purely looking for a flip, that might be different. But I've got no interest in a project that is just coming back into what may seem like some element of a bull cycle where people are actually talking about crypto again in the normie world. For me, it's those projects who've been around, been trying to build and innovate. I do like ordinals specifically. I feel like, you know, after Elon's little talk he about the fact that a lot of these things aren't actually on chain, I think that will lead people down the on chain rabbit hole, which obviously you've got Satoshis and all the different things going on there. But I'm very interested in that. But again, very few collections understand the tech. It's still very, very early. I do feel like you can do a bit of historical back-end research on how like these ETH collections really came to be. Look at punks, look at some of those historical collections, even look at Bored Apes and transfer that knowledge and experience over to ordinals in a way where it's just a lot newer. So yeah, that's like OCM, if you want like a specific example. I think they're doing some really interesting things. And again, yeah, you were looking at like a 0.6, 0.7 ETH opening only a couple of weeks ago, and it's back up to 1.3 over that ordinals news. So yeah, that would be my specific take on that front.
Interesting stuff. I definitely am not as aware of what's going on the ordinal side, although I appreciate some people are very much more into it. And you know, the kind of price action that you see on the one hand could be to do with I don't know, some particular ordinals news, which you mentioned, but equally there are just certain projects which are up a reasonable amount because they are good projects, or what the market might consider good projects from a while ago, and they just felt maybe a little bit underpriced. Moshe, your hand's raised, and we'd love to hear, Sam, your thoughts in just a second for just kind of general take of what you're seeing in this rise back in the market. Moshe, first, what are your thoughts, mate?
Yeah, just a brief way in. I like when Jack was saying, you know, coming back from Breakpoint and this, that, and the other, and I was thinking, yeah, Jack, at least you didn't come back blind, because half the people at ApeFest did. Did you hear about this? This story about many people actually reporting to ER because they had eye pain.
Yeah, I saw. It was very
as a result of the UV
concerning,
lights. So how bizarre. But yeah, I think when it comes to the current market trends as to what people are actually responding to, it doesn't seem to be what we all seemingly entered into the market for, which in my opinion is like innovation through the utilization of blockchain technology. So what we're seeing is loyalty schemes, gambling mechanics, airdrop farming, and then when you look into when you look at like the initiative from the Yuga, my thought goes immediately to what is the incentive to actually use that marketplace, and probably they'll deploy that mechanism. The three mechanisms that I just mentioned. And then I actually just wanted to briefly talk about like the importance of authenticity, as Legendary alluded to earlier. And I think in a polarizing Web3 architecture that is so based on bag holder bias, right, or like just people going out and funding these NFT projects, the most powerful thing you can be is authentic and impartial. And I think people, I don't think they've quite utilized that yet. I don't think they've quite understood that yet. I think many people are they're based predominantly on a popularity contest, and it's actually an authenticity contest.
Yeah, fair point. Fair point. I think that is one of the things that we, I don't know. I think the whole thing is a popularity contest to some extent. And, arguably one of the best investment theses for these projects is just trying to invest in a cult, try to invest in the best cult around. And hopefully the price goes up from that perspective. Sam, just wanted to, if you're available to take it, I know sometimes at this earlier time slot, it's a bit more difficult for you, but any thoughts on the numbers going up at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you look at if you dig a little deeper, the unique buy wallets has not gone up at all, which, this past week we had the third lowest unique buy wallets of the past 2 years. So I think my sense, yes, like you certainly had a little bit of price movement a couple weeks ago, and I think that's not deniable on the price side. But the past week, like volume's gone up. My guess is that airdrop farming's picked up, and I think, I haven't really figured out or spent the time finding like the number to prove this, but I mean, the Blur token's back up to 30 cents from 15 cents. We have an absolute end date in mind. Like, it's actually, for people who have ever airdrop farmed, like, the conditions have never been better or more, I guess, seemingly lucrative. And I say seemingly, not even in air quotes. Like, I think, with the Blur token at 30 cents from 15 cents, and we know exactly when it ends, you can kind of really figure out how much each point is probably around worth. And, so I think like these things like Springfield Simpsons probably get a real boost from airdrop farmers. But overall, I think it's hard to get we're back heavy until you start to see more wallets trading NFTs, which, at the multi-year low for.
Yeah, I did see that. That's such a good statistic to bring up, because someone did share that the actual number of people is not necessarily going up. So very, very good context. Legendary, the other point Sam was making, which I think is super relevant. I know we've been thinking this for some time. I've just brought up a tweet that you wrote over the weekend, I think, where you were explaining how you've written airdrop guides for the last 70 weeks. What was your kind of reason for writing this tweet, and what's the takeaway for people with us today?
Reason for writing this post was seeing the timeline posting airdrop season is back, airdrop season is back. And in my opinion, the reality is that airdrop season never went away. It's been on all the time, and it's the same. It's been the same with Arbitrum. If you looked at the Arbitrum token distribution at the airdrop, I think you needed activity over more than a total of 8 weeks. The thing is, with airdrops, with layer 2 protocols, with any other kind of token distribution, that you benefit from doing it consistently, from doing it when others are not looking at it, that you benefit, obviously, as Sam mentioned, from an environment where not that many wallets are active. And airdrop season's been always on with ZK Sync, with Layer 0, with Starknet. There are so many things to do and consistently do that like never really went away. But it's often the thing that we only then pay attention when we see a big airdrop in the space. Then everyone's talking about airdrops for 1 2 weeks, and everyone forgets about it for the next 4 to 5 months. I mean, for Arbitrum, I think we had more than 6 months of activity that we covered on it. Then you have the next airdrop, and the cycle repeats.
Yeah, it's funny now that we've been around for like a few cycles of this, and because we produce these guides, we kind of know exactly what happens, where we're telling you this right now, and so few people are actually going to go and do anything about it. What will happen is this: ZK Sync or Base or one of the other protocols will announce, one of the big layer 2s will announce an airdrop. Some people will get them, everyone else will get super FOMO, then start to do the next one, and then they'll give up after 2 weeks when it goes away from the timeline and people stop sharing how many thousands of dollars that they made during the time. Because the thing is, as you say, you've got to put the time in way before, months before, weeks before. And yet, having said that, it's still like, we don't know the parameters. You never ever do. So it's worth considering now if you have not done anything up to this point. Any final thoughts on that, Legendary? I think that's an important one to make. I think it's helpful for everyone here. Any other thoughts before we get into the first headline and kind of talk about the Simpson news?
I'm very happy to straight go into the headline.
Excellent. Do you wanna talk about Simpsons, set it up, or shall I?
Feel free to take it away.
Okay, here we go. So if you haven't seen the Simpsons clip already, it's really good. Like, it genuinely made me laugh. It also, I saw a DC investor write a tweet like, okay, which one of you degens is like a writer at the Simpsons? It's like bang on. Like, it's definitely not written by someone who doesn't understand properly. And if you see the art that's been incorporated, it's all really, really good stuff. Like, it's all like there's Beeple Human 1, there's a Ringers in the room. So I'll explain what happens first, then explain which NFTs were in which room. So in essence, I mean, I've got a tweet from AC, the collector here, summarizing what happened. Homer makes an NFT of Bart. Marge has to try to travel into the blockchain to go and rescue Bart from, and then she has to travel through these different rooms. Like, the lowest value NFTs are in one room, then to the next room, then the next room, then the next room. In the first room, there was a Doodles complaining in the lowest value section, and then in the highest value one, there's like a Ringer, there's an X copy, there's Bored Apes, there's Beeple. So it's been done by someone who clearly understands like what's going on in the market. And then Marge goes into the blockchain, tries to save him. It's all very funny. It's all very nicely done. Then I think Smithers tries to buy the top of the market, and then Homer goes into the blockchain and then gets lost there because the market dies away. So I would definitely recommend watching it. It's very funny. It's nice to see. What did you think about it, Legendary? And then, as a secondary point, what did you think about the little free mint that spun off the back of it? What's that telling you about the market?
So I didn't see the full episode. I just saw clips plus a couple of write-ups, like the one that you've just been sharing. Like, my first thought was that someone really understood Web3 culture
Yes.
and understood what's going on. And
I agree.
often, we say that it's so difficult to grasp Web3 culture. We had that post around Daniel Allegre that, it took him 6 months to understand NFT culture, and it's so complex, and it's fine that it took him half a year. But then on the other hand, it's so impressive to see shows like The Simpsons, like just nailing that. And it's interesting if you're inside a bubble and then you have more knowledge than the average person, and then you read a news article on NFTs, NFTs are dead, or a news article on the blockchain, how it's only used for scams or whatever. And then you definitely have more knowledge and you can point out the flaws in it. Then you think about, okay, how a news papers writing about other topics where don't have that expert knowledge status, and how many things they get wrong. And then you take an entertainment series like The Simpsons, and they see how accurately they manage to nail down things that everyone in the Web3 space is like, shit, they had a perfect grasp of the culture, prices, relevancy of stuff, and just made a good episode from that.
Yeah, I thought it was awesome. It was really, really well done. It did make me think that there's no way that it would be able to be done without someone who's super in tune with the space to be able to produce that. So definitely well played to them there. Jack, your hand is raised, and then Kusho. Also want to see what Funky has to say on this. Jack first.
Yeah, I didn't see the episode, so I cannot wait to watch that. This just gets me so bullish. Like, The Simpsons I grew up with. I'm actually getting my first tattoo over my birthday, which is, for those in the know of those early seasons, it is Uta in his little tighty whities, running away from Homer, who's got like a little towel during a hockey game, chasing him, where he says, "Don't make me run, I'm full of chocolate," because essentially that's, you know, that is me. That is my whole like life. That's mainly, if I'm ever running, that is the exact thought process that's going through my head. I'm full of chocolate. Why am I being made to run right now? So yeah,
So
that's
you're putting
really,
this image on your body.
yeah, it's going on my shin. So like, I just thought it had to go on the leg as well for obvious reasons. So yeah, if you do see me at any point come 2024, then that will be my first tattoo. I've always been thinking about an NFT tattoo, but you can understand why I may have not done that as of yet. Because honestly, the free projects that I've been like, definitely this one I'll have on my body forever, I am now like the absolute, like it would have just been the worst mistake, put it that way. But here we are with a Simpsons tattoo that may end up being an NFT. So it's a win-win. I just wanted to share that with everyone.
That is great knowledge. We're going to have to see. I mean, you're going to have to share what that looks like when you do get that done, for sure. I mean, but you know, arguably you've already got an option for the Simpsons NFT because there have been some derivatives. Most immediately, we've got this Springfield. What was it called? Was it called a Springfield Punk that came out within a few hours as a free mint, ran up to 0.3, 0.4 ETH floor. Pretty crazy seeing that type of activity. Kusho, what are your thoughts on the Simpsons, and what do you think of this free mint coming out of the gate in the way that it did straight after? Is that a sign for you for the type of market we're in?
GM. So I think it's a brilliant strategy. It's better than waiting a few weeks before they capitalize off of, you know, all the momentum that they've built in a few hours. It's a hilarious video. I saw the clip and I posted it. And, you know, I think the most hilarious thing for me was the fact that the train where the NFTs were was powered by FOMO, which is like,
Yeah,
which is like the
that was
biggest
really
statement
smart.
to everything that we know of about NFTs, especially for, you know, the many of us who actually are Homer in this picture. We are in no way, but we are totally Homer, showing up in the market, buying up stuff at the point where the market gets, you know, cloaked in an avalanche of FOMO and shit. So it's an amazing thing. I feel like the whole mint and, you know, the follow up after that is just a testament to how much of Web3 is built on top of meme culture. So it's not a very serious, it's not the kind of industry where we wear suits and ties to meetings. It's kind of industry where people show up with, like, you know, slides and JPEGs on their t-shirts, and it's hilarious, but it also fits the kind of people that we are.
Yeah, I agree. One of the things I thought, I like that you brought the FOMO meter up, because basically in this train, the train runs on FOMO in the cartoon. And I guess that is a type of metaphor for how the market works, but it's also like a helpful metaphor in terms of the imagery for you to consider where you are in any stage of when you're entering into any project. And I remember this thing that Suzu said ages ago. This is pre, you know, 3AC going bankrupt. Said you always have to be aware of where you are on the informational totem pole. I don't know if informational is for sure a word, but that's, I'm pretty sure what he said. Like, where are you on the totem pole? And in some respect, like when you're thinking about the FOMO meter, like where are you on that meter? Like, where is the market? Because if you think that getting some information on Twitter is like a good point of entry necessarily, like maybe sometimes it is, but you have to just be aware that on the informational totem pole, you're like way further down than some other people, because before that there's the Discord messages, before that there's the team and advisors, before that there's just like the friends group, before, you know, everyone. So you just need to be aware of where you are, both in terms of the FOMO meter as well as, you know, where you are on that informational totem pole. Good thoughts there, Kusho. And that was just my reflection on it. Funky, final thought on this. And we want to, and then actually want to bring Legendary back.
Yeah, so actually what I was going to say, I caught the episode. I was watching the Cowboys-Eagles game, and it was on Fox, and right at the end, it just flipped over to Simpsons. And I was captivated within the first minute, because this was the lead off to the entire episode. And I was like, what is going on? They're talking about NFTs right now? Like, this is so crazy. But I also think, and I was laughing hysterically. Actually, if you look at my tweets, that was like, I tweeted it last night. I took a picture as the cat started exploding. And I was like, is anybody else watching The Simpsons right now? They already minted Bart as an NFT. And now like they're going into the blockchain. It was really crazy. It was a lot of fun. I was laughing a lot. But I think it's a testament to The Simpsons. They've been on for 35 years. And I think one of the things that that show has always done exceedingly well is be constantly culturally relevant and to always pick out things that are on the edge, these trends. So I think it's maybe, a sign of the times and just that more of this adoption is going to come as this information gets out there. But I thought it was great. It was, if you haven't seen it, watch it. It was hilarious.
Yeah, that's an awesome point. You're completely right. In order to run for that long, there's no way that you can ignore particular cultural trends and movements. And so I think you're right. They've inserted themselves into the conversation here and done it in a really, really good way as well. And they have to be good at that. And that's why they run for so long. Legendary, kind of taking the conversation before we move on, moving it into like, is there any effect of this? Because what is there any consequence for the market when you get this type of exposure? What do you think of these crypto? What are they called? I keep forgetting the name. Springfield punks as well. And then, yeah, do you think that there's any benefit to the market of this crypto exposure? And then I've got a point to make on that in a sec.
Yeah, I think once you just watch TV shows, whatever it is, and NFTs, blockchain, Bitcoins are being mentioned more and more often. Watched more episodes of the morning show, not our morning show on X, but the morning show on Apple TV with Reese Witherspoon, Jennifer Aniston, and they are talking about NFTs. The more you see it, the more it becomes culturally accepted. But I also wanted to have a quick look when The Simpsons actually mentioned something crypto related for the first time, because typically they're actually very early to spot trends, and they've been super early to mention Bitcoin. Really? First time in December 2013, they mentioned Bitcoin in one episode, and they've been the second TV show to do that. Actually, the only show that mentioned, according to that Bitcoin wiki page I'm looking at, that mentioned Bitcoin before The Simpsons was The Good Wife in January 2012, where they actually had an episode called Bitcoin for Dummies. So it was quite interesting to see that essentially The Simpsons mentioned Bitcoin almost 10 years ago.
Wow. That's pretty nuts. Really, really, yeah, as you say, pretty impressive. Okay.
And to the second part of your question, to the Springfield punks. I've also seen the Springfield apes and other derivatives of that. They got like what, 1K 940 ETH trading volume. Obviously a nice thing, but I just don't really see it as a sustainable collection. It was definitely a nice flip for those who got in early. But still, it is, no matter if it's blur farming or whatever, a good sign to see that run up so fast and to see significant volume in a short time was definitely something that had a nice feeling and a nice ring to it.
Sure. I guess the final question on it is this one by Loopify, which I kind of want to tie into the time of year that we're in. So he said, the Freeman Collection, Springfield Punks pumps to 0.45 ETH each in 2 hours, inspired by the Simpsons episode on NFTs. He said, this is literally a sign of early bull market. I kind of want to tie this into the time of year we're in, where it's like we're going into Christmas. And for me, Christmas is always a time where I always ask myself this question, like, what's the story that we tell the people that we see over Christmas? What's the story that you're telling your friends and family? Are you going with your head between your hands, or even lower, because you're embarrassed of the things that you told them the year before? And therefore people walk away thinking that you are a complete embarrassment and no one should have ever listened to you for financial advice or otherwise? Or are you coming in showing them not just the Springfield chart, or are you walking in saying, you see this Bitcoin thing, it was like 18K a while ago, and you might be thinking that the world is ending because there's all these bad things going on, but this is up 2x now. It's at 35K and it was at 18 not so long ago, and there's all this bad news around, but this is up this much. What's your thought on that kind of double idea that I've just put forward?
I like the Christmas line of thought, going home
Honestly,
to the family.
it's one of my
bull
main
market, bear
investment
market.
theses. I just think, like, how are we coming out of Christmas? What have people said to their friends and family? And therefore, what will happen in January?
Yeah, no, it is a fair point. I mean, if you think about it, like from a sociological perspective, when you have Christmas, families reuniting, more people speaking, meeting people who probably don't spend that many time then with family members if they're like hardcore degens, and it's definitely the time when you would speak about Web3, AI, other tech that comes up, investments being made, money being lost. So I think it's a fair point. However, with that post by Loopify saying that this is a sign of an early bull market, I wouldn't go that far. I mean, yes, it's a sign of positive activity for sure. And again, it was nice to see it. I also don't know the production cycle of a Simpsons episode. So like, when did they actually produce this? When was it made? When did they have the idea for that? I have no idea about that because I was never a massive Simpsons fan to have that amount of detailed knowledge on it. But I just think that even if that happened a month ago, 2 months ago, in the lowest lows, it's such a big brand. And when they talk about NFTs and have that free mint, people would have bought and traded that, which again goes in line with the point that NFT stats that Sam had before, that if you look at the number of active wallets, it's still very, very low. So you don't need a lot of people per se to pump up a free mint to have an ETH. So calling that a sign of an early bull market, I wouldn't necessarily agree with.
Sure. Okay. I think that's fair. That's a fair perspective. I appreciate we've got some more people, Jack and Moshe, want to come in on this, but we're going to need to keep it moving because we've only got 20 minutes left today, and definitely want to spend a reasonable amount of time on this Magic Eden Yuga Labs news from a couple of days ago. Legend, do you want to set this up, or shall I? And then someone change the title.
I'm very, very happy to set this up. It
Cool.
was a news from 2 days ago. Yuga Labs announcing with Magic Eden that they are planting something new for all creators. Yuga Labs are partnering up with Magic Eden to launch a new Magic Eden ETH marketplace, the first major ETH marketplace contractually obligated to honor creator royalties. The marketplace will launch end of 2023. More details soon. I think NFT Stats had the most interesting comment or perspective to add on that, saying that enforced royalties for Bored Apes would likely require a contract migration, and curious if they do that with the apes as they also did it with other side, because in his opinion it would be a mistake as apes already have developed real provenance on the blockchain, which is a take that I definitely agree with. So I'm curious to see how they will try to approach and solve this.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to go straight to Sam actually on that. If you'd like to come in to provide any other thoughts on that, Sam, before I give my own.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen this before. It seems until this point, the ways to enforce royalties, like you have to do one of two things. Either you have to block a ton of exchanges, which I shouldn't say everybody, which about half of crypto Twitter starts talking about how much they hate and how antithetical it is to NFTs to block exchanges and to build that. So that's one of your options, or you can enforce royalties. And the third option is maybe they find some way to adjust the technology in some sort of way, which some guys who I do know have come up with some interesting solutions that have not really been commercialized or put out there yet. So it's got to be one of those things, but it always ends up becoming this debate where you have where people don't like either option. Some people like the idea of royalties not being enforceable, but for people who do like them, they also don't like the idea of an NFT project telling you which exchange you're allowed to trade on and which ones you're not, because they feel like it's my tokens, I own them. Who are you to the whole point of decentralization is that I can trade them anywhere. And so you kind of until now, you've had to have one or the other of those two. And everyone's been, when we get in these debates, I just feel like everyone's yelling at everybody else. Everyone's talking about how evil OpenSea is, talking about how evil Magic Eden has been, while in the meantime, they're losing all their market share to exchanges that weren't enforcing. Then they do decide that they're not going to enforce. Some people talk about how evil they are. I don't know. It feels like kind of the underlying backbone is just problematic. But that said, Yuga knows this, and Magic Eden 100% knows this. And they came out and said, we're doing something here, details to follow. So I think it's very intriguing.
Yeah, that is super.
There could be a wrapper. When I put that in, the main comment was kind of like the Gabe laid in, like the key here is to wrap the NFTs and to come up with new rules once it's wrapped. And if you trade it when it's not wrapped, then you become a bad guy or whatever. You're bad. That's simplistic. You don't get the privileges. Or, that's one of the like the wrapping solution does seem to be something people have talked about.
Yeah, because I guess the wrapping maintains the integrity of the token, right? Kind of like the wrapped CryptoPunks, which trade on Blur and separate.
Yeah, it's not like my quirky where the old one like is like a black box now, and the one like because I never switched it or like I go back to my wall and it's like literally a black square where it used to be my red laser eye quirky is now a black square. I feel like wrapping, at least you can kind of have that back and forth thing where at least they're still honoring the original kind of provenance of the NFT, which punks have been wrapped for a long time, so maybe there's something there.
Yeah,
I hope that they're finding a way to positively incentivize whatever solution they will be proposing, if it's wrapping, if it's a migration. There's obviously you have the full token ecosystem around Ape, and there's so many ways for them to positively incentivize whatever behavior they want to see instead of going for negative incentives, and the banning of other marketplaces, etc. And I just think it's better practice to go for positive incentives. Also, Riggs, shout out to Riggs in the audience, had a very strong take in the comments on X, saying that this is a step back to centralization.
Exactly. Those are the comments that come up whenever anyone talks about royalty, incentivization. It's just, like that's just the conversation that ends up happening. The thing I will say, like they've done that with Other Deed. With Other Deed, they've said like, if you migrate, then you can get your vessel, then you can get this, then you can get that. Whereas if you don't, you can't. And that hasn't really worked. So I think Yuga knows that hasn't worked. And they've done pretty hardcore incentives there as far as only if you migrate can your Other Deed be another deed. But still, I think it's the majority that have not moved.
Interesting. I was just thinking of like who else has been able to make people do stuff relatively successfully, and I just thought of, because I agree with you, most people are kind of against the idea of that. I've just got up on the screen Tropo's comment, which was like, I'm not migrating shit, don't care if that means I'm losing benefits. Spencer of Spencer Ventures also agreed, I'd probably sooner sell most of my apes than migrate them. So definitely the migration element is not something that people want to do. And yet, when I think of DeGods, for example, and how they managed to pull off just encouraging people to do something. Now, I appreciate it's a different thing, right? You're moving from one place to another, but on some level, like the Solana token is very different to I don't know. When you bridge that legendary, is that the same token? When you have to come, that has to be a new token, right? That comes out on ETH.
Yes, it is, because it's a different layer one. I mean, obviously it's backed, and even if you bridge ETH to Solana, it's backed, but it's a different token that you create anew. Yeah,
exactly. So it's one of those things. It seems like you can't have it both ways. Interested to see where they come out on that. Jack, your hand's raised. Then Moshe, what are your thoughts, Jack?
I really do feel like this space went entirely downhill when we started letting exchanges push what direction we go within this space. And I appreciate that there are traders and that there are people who are actually holding these things for the long term. And maybe the long-term holders are a smaller portion than the traders are right now. But I think at the end of the day, like if you actually want these projects to succeed, right now royalties definitely supports that success. And whether it's completely right or wrong, definitely not. Like if you look at, for example, the ability for projects essentially to start pushing negative narratives, because that will increase churn, and royalties do incentivize increasing churn to some extent. Because if you get a bunch of people selling and buying, that's where the royalties come in. So there's definitely still issues to address. But the idea that this space is going to progress as quickly as it did during the fuel of royalties and the funds that that can generate for the project. That's one of the reasons I'm here. And I'm not saying that that's the reason everyone should be here, or I'm disagreeing. I do think that there should be an element of people who want to just trade the project to still be able to do that. But for the people who want to hold it for whatever utility that business or project are going to try and build out, the idea that they're not going to pay royalties and yet get all the incentives that royalties bring, I think just doesn't really make sense to me from a value proposition. It doesn't. I just don't understand any of the arguments that I've seen on the timeline, and I've had a couple myself. It just doesn't make sense, and I think that's where we need to get to. Is like, if there's got to be both, there's got to be both. But it, you know, what we're seeing right now is the ability to enter clubs and enter projects that are basically saying, look, what we're going to build out, anyone who holds this NFT is going to get access to. Yet you can, right now, all this does is incentivizes lower and lower prices and for people to gamble on the bottom of that market, like on the bottom of that NFT sale, to get the same access. And royalties at least envelops some sort of ability to say, right, well, all that money coming into the project, the ability to hold long term, it gives you the ability and the team the ability, whilst they're trying to find their feet or whatever the product will be, that they can still provide value back to the holders in the meantime. And we've seen a lot less of that and a lot less innovation, in my opinion, from the anti-royalties side.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely, there's obviously two sides to that argument, right? I think that's a well expressed side to that side of the argument. I guess the alternative is that it creates these kind of skewed incentives for the ongoing sustenance of a project, which requires the trading of the project to make money. And then arguably, you know, when you think back to 2021, there was just so many projects that made so much money via royalties that went on to not necessarily do anything. So I think there's clearly two distinct arguments there. I'm not sure perfectly what the answer is. I did see this interesting thread on, not thread on royalties, just a bit of a longer quote. And I don't know whether people will be so hard about it. It's just it seems to be one of these topics at the moment that everyone is so hard about it. You're either pro it or you're against it. And I just wonder whether there could be some more middle ground where this person seems to have got some traction with this tweet. They would, in respect of one-on-one art, for example, because the market's different, right? There's different things. Well, I mean, some people say it's not different. If creator royalties are there, they should be respected 100%. That's how it should be, irrespective of the type of project. That's one line of thinking. This person was suggesting something else. They were saying, ideally, your one-on-ones will not have a high turnover. We'll meet with the right collectors who understand they need to become guardians of your work for a long time. So hopefully you'll capture most of the value in the primary sale. It doesn't stop you from creating more art. If one-on-ones are part of a theme collection, you can still keep some for yourself. Ideally, you're minting a reasonable edition size by balancing the price and demand level and saving some for yourself. It shows conviction in your work. But if, you know, and then hopefully where they will honor the royalties when the time comes. But if after a long time they are selling at a loss, then it's a different type of a discussion depending on how your career has progressed at that time. So this is this person's argument trying to present like a bit of a more nuanced take, where it's like, look, maybe there are certain circumstances where it is not as necessary, particularly if you have captured a lot of the value in the primary sale. This is just another argument. In respect of PFP projects, which is what we're talking about now, this person said, I haven't really thought about them that much, but the most realistic way is to keep a large percentage back in the treasury and be transparent about how often and with what methodology you'll sell those tokens. So rather than try to play this game of enforcing royalties all the time, which is actually possible now, right? The only reason this is an issue for Bored Apes is because they launched at a time when they couldn't do this, whereas now things like Memeland are permissioned, things like Animocaverse are permissioned, so no matter where they trade, royalties are enforced. So I guess moving forward, it won't even be an issue. Legendary, any thoughts on that? Did that make any sense towards the end? Moving forward,
Yeah,
it's not
absolutely.
an issue, right?
Absolutely. And looking forward, you also have things like ERC 721C, where you can have royalties that have specific conditions tied to them. You could create royalties that only are to be paid when the price is above the last sale or above the mint price or whatever, so that you don't have that skewed dynamic of projects making money when something trends to zero. You can have royalties that are only paid for the first couple of sales and then increase or decrease. So you can even create more complex structures and just go further than that 0-1 logic of either having royalties or not having royalties. But as you said, it is definitely the topic for collections who launched on contracts that just didn't have that enforceability or didn't have the option to go for a dynamic royalty setup or other technicalities.
So I wonder, in some level, then there's only very few projects which have got to the level where people care about the provenance enough, right? And for those projects have probably made enough because people care about them so much to not be that concerned or as concerned with royalties. Because for all the projects moving forward, there's kind of a solution to it. So I wonder whether, you don't want to destroy the provenance of those NFTs for the sake of a couple of % on the sales moving forward. But yeah, interesting thought. But I thought that was an important distinction to make. Like, yes, we're talking about this for those collections that already exist, but I think the problem has largely been solved for any project that is now intending to launch. Guys,
I don't think so. I don't think it's been solved. I think it still involves blocking exchanges, and the only reason that I think a Blur is going to enforce royalties is because other exchanges get blocked. Like they won't, but it looks like if you look at Captains, the average royalty paid on SudoSwap is 0. If you look at Captains, the average royalty paid on LooksRare is basically 0. So LooksRare, or so like Blur and Opens, like I think with Captains, it's more that they got in there with enforced royalties on OpenSea, like just the right time, and OpenSea said, fine, we're going to continue to enforce until February 1st. So they're in just that right time window.
I see.
But come February 1st, OpenSea says they will no longer enforce, and there's nothing you can do in the contract that changes that. I just think a few of these have got really the one thing you can do right now if you really want to enforce royalties is block everything other than Blur, which is what
I completely agree, Sam. I like this royalty debate is such an inconclusive conversation. It's like watching a tennis match between NFT project founders and marketplaces, and token holders just stand at the sidelines observing of like, what does it mean for us? And when it comes to the migration to new token standards, I've got no intention of migrating any of my historic NFTs with provenance over to new token standards. So I can understand how that would work for people with if you own my X copy for Denza or stuff like that, but no interest in migrating those at all. But I think for the new projects moving forward, it certainly can be a solution.
The blocking can, yeah. I mean, the thing about the old ones is you can't block exchanges because they're already. It's already set in stone, and you can't adjust them. I haven't made any statement here about royalties, good or bad. I feel like we had that conversation literally a year ago. I've just been trying to talk about the pragmatics. I just wanted to step in because Bchek did say that this has been solved in the tech, and it has not. The only thing that's been solved is that people have figured out which exchanges they can block in order to enforce.
Interesting.
Just a quick question, Sam. What do you think the incentivization mechanic will be when you could deploy with Magic Eden towards a new marketplace? If you were to speculate, because when it comes to this gambling mechanic, when it comes to airdrop farming, there is no long tail, in my opinion, because it doesn't stimulate. When you look at the statistics across Blur's airdrop farming, 50% of the trade volume is done by 300 wallets, and so that doesn't captivate the whole market towards long-term commitment to what we're talking about.
Yeah, I think, look, Yuga has so many different assets. If you're gonna, I think with Bored Apes, and this was kind of the point I made in the tweet, I think with Bored Apes, Bored Apes have kind of entered the provenance zone, where there's something to be said for owning them because they're just kind of this interesting Harvard Business School study that could kind of maintain, kind of like punks. I don't think they're at punk status, but I think there is just a provenance piece there. But with Yuga, they're introducing vessels and heavy metal. They have all these different things going on, and those things, it's I can see them saying, okay, for these ones where we're building a whole ecosystem around them, that they can play with the functionality of them a little bit. But the point of my whole tweet was it would be very interesting to see what they end up doing with Magic Eden, because both parties are very aware of every problem I've mentioned here, and they've still stuck their neck out and said they had a solution. So I don't know. I'm curious to see what happens.
Yeah, super interesting. It's definitely one to watch. We are going to keep reporting on it. Thank you for the correction. Thank you for all of the interesting discussion today. We have unfortunately run out of time for today's show. We didn't get onto the final headline, but that was ultimately from a couple of days ago. I think you would have digested that by now. And as always, if you want the other Web3 roundup and the Creator Corner news, it's in the snapshot, which is pinned up top if you want to catch up. Otherwise, have a lovely day. Thank you for joining us. We'll be back tomorrow at our usual time, as always, 7 a.m. Eastern Time, 12 p.m. BST. Have a great day. Take care. See you tomorrow. Bye-bye.